Welcome back to Shul.com. We are learning the article from Rabbi Alfred Cohen on what is DAAT TORAH. It's found on jlaw.com. It's a great paper discussing what are the ramifications to listening to DAAT TORAH or not listening to DAAT TORAH. Can you question it? Who is DAAT TORAH? What if DAAT TORAH argue with each other? How does this all work? So we're on page 31 out of 39, and let's continue. The Ran goes even further in his Dirasha 11. The matter is as follows, as we have already written, that Hashem Yitbarach seated the ruling on these matters to the minds and hearts of scholars of every generation, and He commanded us to follow them. Thus, it results that whatever they agree to one of these issues, that is what Moshe Rabbeinu was commanded from the mouth of God. He says on the note on the bottom, this is also the opinion of the Maharal expressed in his Gur Aryeh commentary to Rashi on the verse in Devarim 17-11, which instructs us to follow and not deviate neither to the right or left from the teachings of our rabbis. For he who commanded in the Torah about prohibited or permitted matters also commanded this: do not deviate from whatever they teach you. Consequently, if a person follows whatever the rabbis of his generation, told him to do, he's acting totally with permission, since that is what the Holy One commanded, to follow their words in whatever they teach us. And He also put in the Torah not to deviate from their teachings, so that even if they made a mistake, you are acting correctly and are fulfilling a mitzvah of God. See also the Arbaban's commentary to Parashat Shoftim, note 8. So what does he say? That let's say the rabbis of the generation that have this Da'at Torah that we want to agree with, whatever that definition fully is, and let's say it's mistaken. The person that followed that 100% did a mitzvah, and he is 100% innocent. Whether an individual on the top made a ruling that subsequently wasn't the way it was anticipated, like we saw in our previous paper, to flee or to stay. There were many rulings that told people to stay. They were annihilated. And the ones that violated survived and went to Israel. There was wild situations that came up. In fact, some of the rabbis greeted some of the people they told to stay in Europe. They met them in Israel after the war, and he said, "You're the one who told me to stay." It wasn't a comfortable situation. We know that the Belzer Rebbe apologized, which goes to show you the gadlut, that he recognized that, it was, listen, and we ended that of saying that there really nobody knew, and it was all mazal, and it was just determined that way because there wasn't any, it was all gezerot. But what we're trying to understand is, like we brought in earlier, what if they all forget to tell people, hey, it's time to leave, or it's time to stay, and this happens. And it's listen, we're learning it because we're learning Torah, and we're trying to understand.
Today, you better know.
So today, the reason why it's different today is two primary reasons. We have the country of Eretz Israel, so it's a major difference. Before, people didn't know where to go. It wasn't like they had a ticket. They didn't have the law of return where they can go to Israel. Number two, which is even more important, is that there are rabbis in Israel which are on a higher level learning and a higher level of establishment in Torah that are very clear. It's probably better for you to start preparing to be in Israel, or to have a home, a parnasah, and chinuch for your children in Israel, or at least, where would you go if you had to go? Would you want to go to Tveria? Do you want to go to Ramat Beit Shemesh? Do you want to go to Netanya, Ra'anana? Do you want to go to Bat Yam? Wherever it is, do you have even an idea? And I say this because we see from when we were learning these Jewish history ideas that things move very, very quickly. There isn't always that time. There is always a window, but the window isn't as wide as we always think.
I was speaking with somebody yesterday, and they told me that they expect after this whole episode is done that they're going to get like 1 million people doing Aliyah.
Million?
So I mentioned to you that I was fortunate to be involved with meeting a few people that had met in Canada with the Israeli consulate, and I told you that they had this discussion where if they were going to have an influx of 500,000 Jews coming from the diaspora, from Galut, what they would do, and they were very upfront that we hope that they like tents in the Negev because that's where they're going to be. I mean, if they don't have homes, they're going to have to build cities, and they will build the cities. One thing for sure, Israelis are very intelligent, hardworking people. You may not everyone might not be so comfortable with their style or how they are. But our brothers in Israel are very capable. Don't underestimate their capability. I've watched and seen a lot of things that are done. I see the Israelis that have come down here. I'm very impressed. They're hardworking. My father, the same thing. My father was Israeli. When he came here, I saw the way they're hardworking. They have their method. Of course, it will be done. But the assumption that they're going to take 500,000 or a million Jews and suddenly have cities. I mean, what are you expecting? The splitting of the sea again? Maybe.
But on the flip side, I heard from the CJA that when you mentioned the Canadians, but I heard from the CJA that they said that although right now Israel doesn't have the capacity to take it in terms of physical infrastructure, when you see the rate they're developing at, the space is there.
Yes.
You don't see it as a big country, but you can fit almost double the population there if you were to use it.
It's going to work. We know it's going to fit because it's Eretz Tzvi. What do you mean Eretz Tzvi? What's so interesting? Why do they call it Eretz Tzvi? The land of the deer. Tzvi. Why the Tzvi? Because when you take the skin off the Tzvi, you can never figure out how that was on it. You can never stretch it. Meaning, if you take it off, it shrinks, it goes tiny, and you're like, well, this was one of the deer. That was that. It doesn't make any sense. But that's the land. The land stretches. It has a beracha, and we know that from the Beit Hamikdash. They would omdim tzifufim korim mishtachavim. They would stand like this when they were praying, literally. And then suddenly, when everyone got to Modim, he suddenly had in front of him enough space to fully bow down. It was one of the miracles of the Beit Hamikdash. And it's unbelievable. That was in the second Beit HaMikdash. There wasn't a lot of miracles in the second Beit HaMikdash. But imagine 1 million, 2 million, 5 million people squeezed into the Azara where they can't fit, and then suddenly, boom, they're all able to do the Amidah. Everyone saw it. And nobody was able to calculate it, because if you measured it, and there was also another miracle, I mean, not in the second Beit HaMikdash, the first, but when it came to the Kerubim, you had these sticks the poles sticking out. If the poles would stick out of the curtain, so you were able to see the Aron, the first Beit HaMikdash, and in the Mishkan. But if you measured them, they weren't long enough. They stuck out, but they weren't measured. They weren't there. Okay, let's continue.
So the dimensions, something didn't make sense to the dimensions.
Yes, the dimensions. Yeah, they're all interesting miracles that happen. This is the home of God. In the home of God, you see these things. Okay, and we must also believe that even if they agreed on something and it is the opposite of the truth, the rabbis, which we know to be so because the prophet tells us, nevertheless, it is proper for us to deviate from it is not proper for us to deviate from the agreed teachings of our Chachamim. What does he say? Let me explain to you. It's brought down on page 198. Dibur Manchil ve'hu Amram. So he says here that let's say the Chachamim said something, and then a prophet came along and said, no, that wasn't true. Whatever you listen to the Chachamim, that was right. Because you're not supposed to deviate from what the Chachamim say. Now let's continue. Based on the above, the author of Ketzot HaChoshen in his preface, as well as Rav Moshe Feinstein Zatzal in his preface to Igrot Moshe, explained that the responsibility of the Talmid Chacham is to rule in accordance with his understanding of the Torah, even if it objectively may turn out to be the opposite of the truth. So he has to use tools to figure out what the answer is, even if he doesn't fully agree with it. Let's take a look what he says here on the bottom. The Ritva in Eruvim 13b essentially concurs with this position. However, see Rashi in Ketubot 57a, as well as Chavot Yair number 122. Further sources, including the following: the Shut Rivash 447, the Netziv, introduction to his commentary to She'il Tot, introduction, the Netivot, Hamishpat, introduction to Yam Shel Shelamo, and Igrot Moshe Orah Hayim, 4 pages 13 and 43. Okay, let's continue. The posek must rule in accordance with his own understanding of Jewish law. He has to proceed from a deep sense of reverence and fear of heaven, and to do the best he can. Even so, concedes Rav Moshe, it is possible that he may err. Meaning, they're going to use the tools and their knowledge and their expertise, but the assumption that it will always be accurate is not our responsibility. Our responsibility is to follow. You make yourself the rabbi, aseh lecharav, and you follow his opinion. It's not about who's always right. If we accept that the majority opinion is right, or at least that it expresses the normative ruling which Jews should follow, that is not to label the minority view as wrong. The Gemara has already pronounced that Elu ve'elu divrei Elohim hayim. These and these are the words of the Lord. Both the majority and the minority opinions are the words of the living God. However, only one view can be the normative ruling which should be followed in practice. This means that even if the rabbis err in their ruling, they are not telling us something wrong. They told us something right. The result might have been erred, but what they said was based on appropriate understanding. This principle is one of the reasons why the Talmud records not only the majority conclusion of Torah debates, but the minority positions as well, because they're not wrong. The other opinions, when there's machloket and Gemara, both of them are right. Just we could only follow one halacha. And whenever I do learning with machlokot, I always try to understand the other opinion, how he could be right, to the extent that you have to be able to prove both opinions as being accurate. Thus, great rabbis can disagree, and they can both be true Torah principles. It's very important to know this, that it's not about who's right or wrong. It's that we have to have a halacha. We have to have one derech. That's not to say has v'shalom that the other side is wrong. If a Hasid does something one way, and an Ashkenazi another way, and a Timani and a Sfaradi one way, these are all following the Orthodox system of the Torah. They're all right. It's just a matter of understanding and how they all came to this conclusion.
And like you said, even if you're wrong, if you follow the wrong opinion...
Not you're wrong.
Sorry,
if the result was not,
exactly,
you feel that was erred, the opinion was right.
Exactly.
Because when we say they're wrong, it's going back to their opinion. No, based on what he's saying here.
Because you said that nullifies what they told the congregants to do pre the Holocaust.
Yes, that based on that, they were right, even if the result seemingly was not what...
This is like a very drastic result.
I know. That's why we come here to learn. I when I do this research to prepare the classes, I do this for this purpose, to understand the alternative. We go into nitty-gritty stuff here. I told you.
That's also, when you think of it, though, is that Torah supposed to lead to an outcome that's perfect for that individual, or is that Torah supposed to...
Because you set forth what your outcome is going to be.
Exactly.
But God has sometimes a different system.
If that was the Gzirah, right, the Holocaust, unfortunately, if that was the Gzirah, that Torah actually helped fulfill that Gzirah in a kind of weird, messed up way, but that was actually the will of Hashem, even though we see it as a clear decision.
Exactly.
So,
very good.
Also to the creation of Israel.
That's it. That's a modern Jewry, basically.
Listen, of course, there's definitely a connection.
And jewelry.
There's definitely a connection for sure. Okay, if this is true, and it is, in matters of halacha, it also holds true in areas of Hashkafa. Hashkafa, we can call it Musar, or you can call it philosophy or ideology. Attitudes to other nations, and questions of the direction which the Jewish community ought to take. Assuming there is DAAT Torah. That was a new topic, a new subtopic. If, as we have seen, it is conceded even by the most fervent proponents that mistakes can be made, why is the type of authority imputed to DAAT Torah seen as a positive force in Jewish society? Based on what we're saying here, that DAAT Torah can err and make a mistake, but it could seemingly be right. Why is this a positive thing? Why would someone want to bring on the forefront, hey, DAAT Torah said that? Well, we just concluded that DAAT Torah could err, even though for the individual who listened, it's not a problem. So why is that something so important? Maybe DAAT Torah should just be something small. Why is it? So the rationale for establishing some kind of last word in the halachic process is really quite straightforward. In as much as it is impossible for human society to function without their making one of them the head over the others, for them to heed his directives and to observe his decrees. For people's opinions differ from one another, and they will never all agree on how to proceed on any matter, and therefore it will result in a cessation of projects. Therefore, it is necessary that they accept the views of one of them, whether it is good or bad, so that they may succeed and proceed with their activities. At times, his plans will result in great benefit, and at times, the opposite. But all this is better than controversy and machloket, because you need to have one opinion. You can't have two heads, two chefs in one kitchen, which leads to a total standstill of any progress if there's going to be controversy. And this is brought down in Sefer HaChinuch, mitzvah number 71. Even if the leadership may occasionally sanction a wrong turn, it is better than no leadership at all, which only results in strife and stagnation. So sometimes it's better to have a leader who seemingly might not be 100% right all the time, which is human to err, than to have no leader, and then everyone just go their own way or have machloket.
Or even worse, multiple leaders. Like when you have, when there's no centralized power, then you see like, oh, my sect, this sect, and he's going to make his own version of Torah, Shalom, and it's not going to be the right way. So you have one, like, kind of like a justice system where, okay, it covers 95. Yeah, there's the 5% that screws up, but the 95 is like...
Listen, we have seen, at least in some situations, where there's corruption, and that leadership can sometimes be taken to their own benefit of people. There's no question about that, and that's why there's different da'at Torahs that we've seen here, that there are different opinions. Sometimes you might be under one auspices and conclude this may not be appropriate for you, and you can adjust. Sefer Achinuch Mitzvah 78 upholds the principle of everyone's following the same procedures. Were there no such rule, everyone would follow Torah as he perceived the truth, resulting in the destruction of society. With many Torahs rather than one Torah, for each person would be bound to follow the truth as he saw it. He would read the Torah, whatever he saw that does be fit, I do that. Therefore, the Torah has established the principle of majority rule to promote the unity of Torah observance and preserve the community. This desideratum is so great that even if the leadership makes a mistake, the individual Jews who follow their instructions have done no wrong. As support for his thesis, the author notes that in case of error, it is the leadership and not the community which has to offer a penitential sacrifice, which means if that's the case, it goes back to the leadership that has to bring the korban, not to the people. Now, the desirability of uniformity extends only to communal practice, but which still leaves room for the individual to follow the da'at Torah, which he chooses. So sometimes you can have a majority on halacha that everyone's following, but he wants to follow a da'at Torah of a different mahalach. You have Sfaradim who take da'at Torah from Ashkenazim, from Hasidim. Okay, there's nothing wrong with that. He's still in the realm of the halacha there. Now, the ruling has nothing to do with the one in Rosh Hashanah 24a concerning an error made by the leaders, even deliberately, because there it is speaking about a special rule concerning the sanctification of the new moon. He's talking about a ma'amar that comes up on Rosh Hashanah Kaf Dalet Amud Aleph in regards to it, as to why it was the majority Sibur had to bring a korban, or an issue there as opposed to the leadership. Perhaps, yeah.
You're saying that you can pick that Torah as something that's not yours necessarily.
Yes, because if you looked here, one of the definitions of da'at Torah was things that are not pertinent with halacha. Like, hey, Rabbi, I want to go live in the city, or I want to buy this house, or what do you think about which school I should put my kids in? They're both all good according to halacha. So that's not in the realm of the halacha, it's more of the realm of the da'at, how he connects to you, how he feels and thinks, and that's something that speaks to you. And sometimes we see that.
So I have a question. So I'm going to take you as an example. So,
okay.
So when you call the rabbi, in Israel, and he says, no, wait.
Yes, I chose that da'at Torah.
No. From his perspective, how does he know to tell you to wait? Does he have like an intuition, or
100%? So we spoke about this here, that I chose certain rabbis that after meeting them, listening to the Torah and seeing what they have done in the Torah world, that they are l'shem shamayim, and it spoke to me. I felt that I would subdue my own knowledge to that individual's thought process, as opposed to somebody else. Now, of course, somebody who knows me personally and knows the situation personally would be able to give a good advice based on the personal thing, and that's very important. But it's beforehand, if I'm going to go make an aliyah to Israel, or at which point I wanted to ask somebody who was already there about things on the ground, because it's very different from here and from there.
But that's different.
No, so that's...
after 10 minutes, you could get another phone call from somebody.
But
I want to make aliyah. It goes, okay, come.
That's okay. That's okay. Yeah. You know why?
Yeah, but how?
Oh, so that I told you that when a person delves himself in Torah and Kiddusha, not just learning, Shemirat Einayim, Shemirat Oznaim, Shemirat Lashon, it gives a person a koach. We believe this. We believe that a person who's imbued in learning Torah all day, and with Kiddusha, and you ask him a question, he's going to give you an answer that seemingly will be accurate. Now, will it always be the result that you want? maybe, maybe not. We already seen that DAAT Torah doesn't have to be perfect, but you get to choose certain things. You have that flexibility. You understand? In DAAT Torah, and there are, listen, with everything, there's always going to be arguments on it. A person may have his route that he learned halacha with, tell him not to go. But he's learning halacha, and he feels that he might want to ask that, or maybe something else. It doesn't have to be specific to making aliyah. It could be to other things as well. But usually, like when Yossi spoke about this, one of the rabbis asked him very quickly, do you have a place to live in Israel? Do you have a parnasah? Do you have a place for chinuch yiladim? If you can't answer these three, then probably answer them first before you go to the next step. And so he brought up, hey, before you make this decision, at least prepare yourself on those important things.
Also, to your point, I feel like a lot of these rabbis have a certain sense of Ruach HaKodesh to ask you the right questions. For example, when me and my brother, when we both wanted to move to Miami, we got two different answers based on the information that we gave. So for some reason, for me, he went more on the work route. For him, he went more on the wife route. He felt something that there was maybe something there with the wife, and he was 100% correct. It's not the answer that we both wanted at the time, but then, looking back at it, you're like, wow, you know what? I'm happy that I fixed that and then did this, and it seemed like it's much simpler for them to distinguish, and for us, it's like, oh my God.
But I'll give you a good example. Like I asked DAAT Torah, someone who clearly has that authority, according to almost all opinions, and he gave me an answer, and I didn't like his answer. Not that I didn't like his answer. I felt that he was not understanding me well. I sat him down for 2 hours, and I went through the details. And when I finished and I gave him all the details, he's like, "No, you're 100% right." He's like, I didn't know that you didn't. He's like, you gave it to me quickly in 5 minutes, but now that you broke everything down, because I agree with you, because you did the right move. He goes, do what you said. But sometimes, when you feed a DAAT Torah a certain thing, he knows whatever you're feeding in.
Somebody that know you and know your situation.
I know the detail.
I asked Meir,
I know, I was with you.
No, but the first time when I asked him, he told me, I don't know you. Can't give you an answer. He looked at me and told me, some people they say yes, some people they say no. I don't know what your situation, I don't know your family, I don't know your background, I don't know where you want to go, what do you do?
Yeah,
when I have a Talmid, I know him personally and I can say yes or no.
For sure. Now let's continue. Perhaps we may say that in communal affairs, all must follow one decision, but in matters affecting only the individual, that this is not so. So when it came to communal, full communities, okay, you have one DAAT. But when it came to personal things, that's personal to me. It has nothing to do with anybody else. I can make that decision, based on what the DAAT Torah I want to choose. Now, dissent. To what extent is the DAAT Torah expressed by a Talmid Hakam binding? Meaning, when he tells you what to do, is that binding to you, or can you just say, or are all Jews obligated to listen, or perhaps only the specific group which he leads? Or is DAAT Torah to be viewed only as wise counsel, advice, with the individual retaining the option to reject?
Good question.
It's very, very good. So Judaism does not generally demand intellectual subservience, and even a student may disagree with his teacher. How do we know this? It's very simple. Rabbi Akiva had 5 students. None of the 5 students agreed with most of what Rabbi Akiva said. They all had completely different understanding of the same Torah that they learned from Rabbi Akiva. How could that be so? They literally are the 5 that were left after 12,000 pairs, 24,000 get killed. Now he has 5 students, and all the 5 disagree with each other.
And they're all accepted today, and all the big.
And so, how could that be? Yeah. They all learn from one person. Okay, while it is true that the Gemara says whoever disagrees with his teacher, it is as if he were disagreeing with the Almighty. So what does that mean? Let's put down in Sanhedrin 110 and Yoreh De'ah 242-2. The intention here is not that he disagrees with his teacher's thesis, but rather that he tries to usurp his power or degrade his status. Okay, so what that means is he's not disagreeing for the purpose of halacha. He's disagreeing because he wants that position to be the leader or to degrade his status. Even a great Torah scholar is not always right, and the Syrian student is entitled to challenge his reasoning. He says here, the Talmud is replete with pronouncements of great rabbis, Tanaim and Amoraim, which are unhesitatingly challenged, dissected, questioned, and sometimes modified or outright rejected, whether by their contemporaries or later generations. The Serideh Ish 3-9 commentaries that nevertheless one should approach the writings of earlier generations with a great deal of respect, working with the assumption that their Torah knowledge was far superior to ours. If something appears difficult, we should labor to understand it rather than discarding it. As the Ramah rules, it is permitted for him, the student, to disagree with some ruling or teaching of his, even if he can sustain his position and prove that the law is as he sees fit. Now he says here on Yoreh DAAT 242-3, in support of his statement, the Gra cites the Talmudic report that Rav Nachman argued with his teacher, and there is also a report of Rabbi Yehuda Nasi disagreeing with Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel, who was the Nasi, and Tosafot. In Baba Metziah 4b, Dibur Matchil Ein, indicate that Rabbi Akiva had students who challenged his opinion. Terumat Hadesh in 238 laconically notes that this has been the way of learning Torah since the days of the Tanaim. And Pitchei Teshuvah further directs the reader to the Radvaz 495 and the Yabetz 1-5, that arguing on discussions and in Torah is absolutely permitted and encouraged, because that's how you'll sharpen the other teacher. Now, Rav Moshe Feinstein often remarked that he welcomed challenges to his rulings, for he was happy to see that in the community there are people full of spirit who are neither afraid nor embarrassed to criticize. Rav Moshe Feinstein said, I'm waiting for someone to come around, but bring it on. But seemingly they were too embarrassed, and they were afraid to even present their opinion. They just took everything that he said. And even he stated, it's not that big of a deal. He brings down Igrot Moshe, Ibn Ezed 2-11. See, also Igrot Moshe Yoreh DAAT 1, it's 101, and then it's page 186. I always felt when I saw this, I was very intrigued by it, that even the Rav Moshe Feinstein said, it's okay, bring on different opinions, let's discuss this.
Because you would seemingly think that it's almost a form of disrespect, but the Torah is encouraging you to do it.
Listen, if there's anything you learn from the Gemara, is that it's okay to learn and to take apart and to challenge rulings within the context. Now, most people don't believe in themselves. Even when they learn something, they understand it, they don't believe in themselves. Because sometimes I see people give me opinions which I know are great challenges and they won't present it. So I present it. I tell them, you had a good idea. What do you think about this? Everyone has their different feelings on it. In a responsum addressed to his grandson, he remarks, Rav Moshe Feinstein, it is certainly not possible to say that I am always right. But all my rulings were composed and written with hard work and effort to understand the truth. Therefore, I hope that the Almighty, who graciously gives a person understanding, will help me. That's Rav Moshe Feinstein stating that, and that's in Ibn Ezed 4-18. Rav Moshe Feinstein was once asked about the propriety of a Talmid Hacham's opening a yeshiva in Bnei Brak, home of the Chazon Ish, when the rabbi knew that at times he would take positions disagreeing with the opinions of that legendary sage. So they're asking Rav Moshe Feinstein, can this Talmid Hacham open a yeshiva? He's seemingly going to have opinions that challenge the Chazon Ish. With his characteristic sweetness of character, Rav Moshe assured him that there would not be any problem with this, inasmuch as he cannot imagine that the Chazon Ish assumed no one would ever disagree with him. Moreover, as a lover of the truth, the Chazon Ish would certainly have rejoiced if a Talmid Hacham revealed depths of the Torah that he himself had not seen, which I thought was really nice. In this straightforward responsum, we see no hesitation about disagreeing even with the great sage, albeit with proper respect. That's very important. Which is to say that in the view of this great Torah luminary, DAAT Torah is neither monolithic nor infallible. Nowadays, there is no single group of all great Torah leaders, such as the Sanhedrin of old that was found in the Hashkafa Gazit. In practice, then, people may choose in personal, not communal manners, to follow the directives of this gadol or that gadol. You can choose. Like I chose when I wanted to make a call to Israel. You can choose. It's not binding on a communal thing. It's personal. I want to ask you a personal thing about a business, about a personal item. That you choose the gadol that you feel speaks to you the most. And let's continue. The entire Jewish community is not bound to follow only one person, notwithstanding his great erudition, if there are others equally great who disagree. Now, if you have two great people disagreeing, you don't have to choose one of them. There are, of course, many pitfalls inherent in the lack of one voice speaking for and directing all Jews. Unfortunately, many of the dire possibilities are all being realized in our communities today. If individuals are free not to follow the advice of Torah leaders, The practical reality is that anyone can rationalize whatever he wants to do. If you don't have leaders giving specifics, then everyone's gonna rationalize what they're doing. As we see, as happened with some other sects of Judaism, whether Reform or Conservative, which don't follow guidelines like in Halacha, Hashkafa, suddenly it became whatever they wanted it to be. And that is very often not a good thing. On the other hand, everyone automatically following an ideology without stopping to think about it is also a troubling phenomenon. Conclusion. This study has sought to investigate whether Judaism indeed includes an ideology of DAAT Torah, and I believe we have demonstrated that it does. So it shows here that Judaism does believe in something of DAAT Torah. Maybe not in the form that you've understood it before, but it does exist. Perhaps it is not as omniscient nor universal as some would want, but I do not think that there is too much room for doubt on that issue. In a personal comment, this is Rabbi Alfred Cohen, however, I find it distressing that some of our leaders often do not appear to have much faith in the Jewish people. That's a different matter. That's the leaders themselves who don't actually believe people are going to listen. Unfortunately, this lack of confidence seems to extend at times even to individuals whose commitment to Torah values is unquestioned. Even to individuals who have spent a lifetime immersed in Torah study, the implications are hard to rationalize. Some of the pronouncements or actions taken in the name of DAAT Torah bespeak a suspicion that the Jewish community in America today, even the yeshiva-trained, observance-committed multitudes, have to be kept within very narrow parameters, or else they will lose their commitment. Issues are portrayed in black and white with no shadings of gray of any kind. History is revised, books are censored, historic figures are idealized to the point of caricature, blanket prohibitions are issued, all seemingly out of fear that if we give an inch, they will take a mile. It is painful to see that great scholars, even Roshei Yeshiva, whose opinions may be a little different, are not included in a plenary councils of Torah leaders. When they make all these big conventions, they don't even take some of the major Roshei Yeshivot who seemingly are at the forefront. And this is brought down Yoreh DAAT 3-88.
The Rabbi Meir Eliyahu, I heard him yesterday or 2 days ago, he said that when they make a decision on the war now, he said they don't have any of the Gdolim there. He said they should have the rabbis, that we put our kids there and a family to go fight, and they're making decision. Who knows if they're making the right decision?
This is one of the things.
Need DAAT Torah there also.
This is one of the reasons. Yes, you're 100% right. That, and you know what? I think it's a mistake on the part of the Israelis that are doing this. Why? Because they have much more to gain, even if they don't seemingly will agree. Let's say they're not going to agree. I think having DAAT Torah and having Gedolim by their side to go ask them is great. But you should know that the credit of many of the Israeli generals, and I say this, is that they go privately. How many times Rabbi Mansur used to say that some of the generals would go to Rav Shach, or they'd go to the Hamam Hajjah, and they would talk to them privately and say, listen, we're about to do a mission, we're going in here, what do you think? And sometimes they would tell them go, or not, or we're gonna do extra learning. This was all hidden. Don't think that even though Hachamim were always hidden, don't think.
Did you hear the opener for Avislada Belgian? What he was saying about the general that went to come see him about the attacks on October 7th? How they told him, the rabbi, we found documents that said this was just the beginning. The goal was 150,000. It was supposed to be a week later. We found documents and that. So you see, to your point, these high up generals, they do go speak to rabbis.
They do go. It's not. You're not going to see it in the news. You're not going to see it on Arut Sheva. You're not going to see it on all these channels, Hot and Tov and all these. You're not going to see it there. But the reality is, they do. Now, couldn't it be on a higher level? I think they have a lot to benefit, because if there's someone that's focused in Torah with Kiddusha, they have a lot of insight. They see things that no one's going to see. And you know what? This achdut that will come, and I'm sure it's going to get done, is going to bring a lot more beracha for what they're doing. There seems to be an urgency to portray Jewish thinking as monolithic and beyond a challenge. Dissent comes close to being viewed as heresy. Like sometimes when someone disagrees, they seemingly believe, okay, if he disagrees, it's kofir, but that's not true. Rav Kook and Rav J.B. Soloveitchik come to mind, as well as other many more recent Torah figures. He says here on the bottom,
can you ask a rabbi a question, and if he give you the answer, and you don't listen to his answer?
so we just said that. We just said you can challenge DAAT Torah. There's no problem. Now, even with Halacha, you can challenge. There's no problem. As long as you are doing it with the proper respect and not to usurp his position and not to...
When you go to a rabbi, you say, okay, I'm going to Rabbi Hafkanievsky, let's say I'm going to ask him this question, and whatever he says, I'm going to do. But then you go there, you ask him the question, give you the answer that you don't like, and you say, okay, I'm not doing it.
So you said it's not Halacha that you're absolutely bound to, but if you're going to ask that Torah, you should probably...
Listen, I know Rav Chaim Kanievsky told plenty of people that he spoke to go move to Israel. None of them did. And these are people that learn in yeshivas and people that are rabbis. He told them straight out, yeah, come live over here next to me. They didn't. They didn't move. They didn't.
The question is if it's a problem. I don't know. I don't care what they did. I mean, it doesn't mean that
so-
they didn't do it. They right.
So-
Maybe Rabbi Kanievsky is right. Who's right? Who's wrong?
So it's not an issue of right or wrong. It's the issue of can you challenge it? Is it? And we see from here, it's not halacha. It's not binding. He may not be your rabbi. It might be good advice, but it's optional. It's not binding. Now, if you subdue yourself and you agree and have emunah in the Borei Olam that he's giving you the right advice and you're doing what's right and you feel that, you'll probably have beracha from it.
You have emunat chachamim and you believe in this rabbi and you do whatever this rabbi said, but you get to the point that he tell you something that you don't like.
Well, then can I ask you a question?
The question is if there's something wrong with you that you're not listening to him, now when it's not good for you, you feel like you have a lack of emunat chachamim here, or it's okay, you don't have to listen to everything.
Well, it has to do, like I told you, sometimes you can ask a question and give you an answer and they don't know the details. So they're telling you, yes, do it. But if you explain some more of the details, he might say, oh, you know what, maybe don't live here, go live there. Or go live maybe in an American city or with more English speaking. Meaning, these things need to be, it's not black and white. I know you're looking for black and white, but in your case, Yossi, with Israel, there's almost no question that you have to be in Israel for a lot of reasons. First, you're Israeli. Second, this was something that you and your family already had discussed, something that you agreed upon from the beginning. Now, you're right, this chinuch yeladim you need to do, and you need to worry about parnasa in a house. Those three things, work on them. You brought them up, but you have not come up with a solution. And your assumption that you're just going to walk in there and it's just going to all be ready is not proper. So, did you work on that, on number one of a house? Did you work on a parnasa? Did you work on the family? These three things are ikar. Do you have a place? Do you know Ramat Bet Shemesh is the right place for you? Do you know Fish Yerushalayim? All these things are important. Without doing this due diligence, you're just asking the question over and over, and you're not well prepared. Would you move to Dallas, Texas tomorrow? No, for a lot of reasons. One of them is that you have actually no clue what. Nothing there.
I was living there 3 months, but
okay, so then, I didn't even know that, but okay. Let's finish up over here. He says here on the bottom, every student and teacher in yeshiva knows that the Zionists are quote unquote wrong, but precious few could tell you why. Meaning, wherever they call Zionist in the yeshiva system, they sometimes say they're wrong. I'm a big Zionist. I don't know if my definition of Zionism is the way that others have it. I believe that Eretz Israel is part of the Jewish nation, and it goes part and part, and this is the key. I don't know if that means, I don't believe in single thing Theodor Herzl believed in at all. I believe that in the Zionist groups that were before him, like the Gaon Vilna, the Baal Shem Tov, there was a Zionist meeting before. I don't believe a single thing of Theodor Herzl, not one thing. The guy was a kofir. The guy believed in Christianity. His kids converted. He had a Christmas tree in his house. He's not somebody I want to listen to. The fact that he gets a picture in the Knesset, okay. I didn't choose the artwork in the Knesset. If I do, I'll make sure that he gets removed and put the Ben Ish Chai up. What do I want to tell you? I'm going to sit and now. I'm going to sit and now have to worry about that. I don't get it. Okay, so they put his picture up. He's either father. No, he's not the father of anything. Do me a favor. They give him too much credit. Okay, they gave him way too much credit. And you know what? He has no descendants anymore. Read about his history. His entire descendants were all wiped out. I'm not to say why that happened. That's all in the hand of God. So nobody knows the reason for that. So I can't say it. But I can tell you, Why give credit to somebody like that? We believe in the Eretz Israel from the time of Moshe Rabbeinu. So I'm a Zionist like Moshe Rabbeinu was. That he prayed 550 tefillot. That's what I believe in. And like Yehoshua ben Nun. And like all the other ones. I don't need to go to someone recent that didn't believe in the Torah and Mitzvot. I don't even know why. So what he's saying here is that there are people that don't agree with what they say is Zionism connecting Herzl and this. For good reason. Okay? But precious few can tell you why. Explain to me why don't you believe? Because now it says here, they know it is wrong to demonstrate on behalf of the Jews suffering in Israel. They know it was wrong, he says here, quote unquote, wrong. Demonstrate on behalf. He says he's in a laughing way that it's quote unquote wrong to support Jews suffering in Israel, but they don't even know why. Well, if you have brothers in Israel that are fighting on the front lines and they are suffering in some way, why aren't you supporting them? No, I'm not a Zionist. What does that mean? He's a Jewish brother. And if he was in Ukraine, would you support him? Or if he was in France, you would support him? It's wild. Now, I see this as a failure on the part of Jewish leaders to discuss and explain the issues on a mature, intelligent level. They have to discuss it. What do we agree with? I've never seen the Agudah get up and say, okay, guys, we agree with this, we don't agree with that. The Agudah Israel has an office in Israel. And I can tell you, I know some of the Talmidei Chachamim in the Agudah Israel that even they have houses in Israel. I know one of them that sold his house here in Miami and only bought in Israel because he believes that the time is going to come where people are going to have to live there. And he told me that personally. Now, in the Jewish Observer of December 1986, there appeared an article entitled "The Enigma of Moses Mendelssohn," which discussed the life and the beliefs of the father of the Enlightenment movement. The article, which was highly critical of Mendelssohn, particularly because he failed to follow the advice and decision of Torah scholars, noted, however, that although most of his children and grandchildren converted to other religions, they didn't say to be Jewish, he personally was an observant Jew all of his life. This article caused such an outcry that in the next issue of that periodical, the chairman of the board of the Observer printed a mea culpa, apologizing for the article's positive mention of Mendelssohn, whose name is generally an anathema in Orthodox circles. In addition, the Observer printed the comments of the Novominsker Rav castigating Mendelssohn. These comments, it noted, were expressed at the specific request of the Moetzet Gedolei HaTorah of Agudah Israel. Okay, and yet, on the whole, the Orthodox Jewish community today is blessed with many fine and committed people who are not ignorant either of the Torah or of secular matters. I think they could handle serious discussions of communal issues or appreciate in-depth explanations of certain aspects of current Hashkafa, where if they have an opinion, clarify it. Let's go into the nitty-gritty details. Most importantly, I think it is time we remember that Judaism has never demanded a unitary view. Dissent and open discussion have always characterized Jewish scholarship. Disagreeing with someone is not heresy, nor even rejection of DAAT Torah. There are many who seek to be enlightened. They are not challenging DAAT Torah. They just want to understand it better so as to incorporate and integrate the thinking of Torah greats into their own approach to Jewish belief and practice and take this to the next level. Baruch Adonai Le'olam. Amen ve'amen.